I still remember the smell of burnt iron. It clung to the inside of my nostrils like guilt you couldn't scrub off. They called it the day of culling, but to me it was the day I stopped being a son and became something else, something forged in ashes and silence. I was 11 when the Ashari came, tall, glass-eyed creatures with silver robes and smiles that didn't mean safety. They said they were here to help, to study, to share their benevolence. We welcomed them. God, we welcomed them like fools. They gave us tech, filters for poisoned rivers, clean energy, even vaccines that cured old-world plagues, and in return, they took samples, just samples, they said, but those samples turned into people, towns, whole regions that vanished under the soft hum of orbiting collector ships. My father was the first one to raise his voice, not in some grand defiant speech. He wasn't a hero, he was just a construction foreman with a busted knee and a voice that cracked when he was tired. He stood on the edge of a trench at Site 49 holding a plasma cutter like it could mean something. When they came to take more workers, he stood in their way. They shot him through the chest. In front of me, they didn't even use a weapon I could understand. No flash, no bang, just a sharp snap, and he dropped like someone cut his strings. The Ashari didn't look at me. I wasn't a threat, just another dirt-covered boy screaming into the wind. We weren't allowed to bury him. His body was reclaimed for study. That was the word they used. Reclaimed. I never forgave Earth for bowing to them, for signing the accords that made humanity an obligated contributor to interstellar evolution. An NBSP, words dressed up to hide the truth. We were nothing more than livestock to them. The underground didn't rise overnight. It started with whispers, mechanics refusing to service Ashari transports, farmers hiding people off the grid, ex-military types training kids like me how to shoot, how to kill. I was 16 when I got my first taste of payback. A supply convoy outside Zurich, lightly guarded. We hit them hard, fast, dirty. I planted the mine myself, heard the screech of metal and bone and alien flesh cracking under fire. I didn't flinch. I didn't cheer either, just stared at the twisted wreckage, wondering if any of them had seen what they did to my father. It wasn't enough. One convoy wasn't justice. It was a drop in a sea of blood. By 23, I was part of the Blackwing, not a resistance cell, a declaration. We didn't protest, we executed. And when they came looking for me, when they raided the bunker and killed half my crew, I didn't cry, I didn't even blink. I recorded the names of every Ashari who fired a shot that day. I would repay them, all of them. You see, humanity doesn't forget. We endure, we adapt, and when we've lost everything, we don't break, we sharpen. The galaxy thought Earth was quiet, obedient, broken. They had no idea that we were just waiting. And now we had a fleet. Now we had weapons laced with ancient human hatred, and engineering born from pain. And now we were coming to repay the debt in full. The first Ashari ship we brought down didn't scream, it just crumpled silently in orbit like the universe itself had exhaled and forgotten it. Medical vessel, they said. Non-combatant, full of science officers and translators. The media cried about war crimes, about proportional response, about ethics, but there was nothing ethical about the autopsy scars on our children, nothing proportionate about being told we should feel grateful for being harvested slowly, politely, and with a clipboard. So no, I didn't feel guilt when that ship bloomed in fire over Ganymede. I felt balance. We weren't alone anymore. Earth was no longer just one scared rock kneeling under stareworn tyrants. Over the last 6 years, Blackwing had grown from scattered cells into something else, something unified. The Ashari thought we were primitive, disorganized. They didn't realize humans write the best symphonies out of broken instruments. We weren't just terrorists anymore. We were a shadow fleet. The turning point came with the Vulture project. It started as a rumor, a stolen Ashari dreadnought lost during their conquest of the Helios Belt, a husk of alien glory floating cold and forgotten. It was their mistake, leaving it out there. Ours was dragging it back home and turning it into something they would never recognize again. We gutted it, rewired its systems with human code, stripped its AI, fed it with rage and steel and memory. I was part of the refit team on Deck 5. They say the ship screamed when we first fired up the new core, not mechanically, not sonically. Something deeper, like the metal itself. Remembered what it used to be and hated what it had become. I like that. We renamed her Requiquittal. She was our answer. They thought humans were biologically weak. But biology doesn't mean an NBSP and NBSP. When you strap desperation to engineering and feed it revenge, the Requiquittal was our message, a 14 km warbeast wrapped in vengeance. And I sat in the command pit, right hand to Commander Dren. He wasn't a hero either. None of us were. We were tired, focused, ready to write a different kind of history. When the First Fleet moved, we didn't go for military targets. We went for the board. The Ashari ruling caste lived soft, high above their worlds, in orbital habitats larger than any Earth city. They'd spent centuries gorging on tribute from every species. They subjugated, plucking culture like fruit from vines, rewriting timelines to paint themselves as guardians of harmony. They didn't see us coming. They never believed humans could learn FTL navigation without their oversight. They never imagined Earth could reverse engineer gravitational shields from wreckage. They thought we were still trying to split atoms while they wrote poetry in vacuum gardens. The first habitat we struck was called Velis. Prime, pure glass and gold, like a cathedral built to shame the stars. 3 million Ashari on board, no ground troops, no military installations, just lords and scholars and policy architects. We breached it at 3:14. Coordinated time, no warning, no declaration of war, just a whisper of fire through shield layer seams, gutting slash from the Requiquittal's spinal cannon, and then silence. Our boarding teams didn't waste time. This wasn't a negotiation. It was a purge I led. Strike Unit 4 down through the habitats. Archives, marble floors, floating data. Tablets, glowing walls inscribed with centuries of conquest turned poetry. The Ashari scrambled like insects, their long limbs clattering on polished surfaces, their mouths spitting dialects. We understood now, but refused to answer. They begged, cried. They thought empathy would save them. I watched one of them, a tall female draped in ceremonial sashes, crawl to my boots, blood soaking her ornate sleeves. She looked up at me and asked, "Why are you doing this? We uplifted you." I didn't say a word. I shot her in the chest and moved on. We weren't here to explain. We were here to balance the scales. Some of the younger soldiers hesitated. I saw it in their eyes, the weight of retribution, the struggle to equate alien faces with past trauma. But I didn't flinch. I had lived too long with the memory of my father's collapse, too long under the shadow of the Accords. By the time we left Velhi's Prime, it wasn't a habitat anymore. It was a warning. Ashari media called it the Day of Soot. They broadcast desperate pleas across the outer systems, demanding humanity surrender the Rick, denounce the Black Wing, and return to peaceful participation in the Union of Stars. We replied with the attack on their nursery moon Yishelm. That wasn't my idea, even I had to swallow hard when the orders came in. The Ashari bred their highborn there, genetically curated, grown in Biobs. Thousands of gestating nobles, future rulers, sleeping under simulated light. We didn't destroy it, we just shut off the artificial atmosphere generators. Let them wake, let them breathe real space, let them understand what it meant to die without mercy. It wasn't about cruelty. It was about fear, because fear is the one universal language every species understands, and make no mistake, we're fluent now. For every Earth city they erased, we leveled one of their research worlds. For every human child dissected in the name of interstellar progress, we cut down one of their academic towers. No negotiation, no bargaining, no peace talks. We had tried diplomacy, it cost us generation. This time we were writing in fire, and the stars bore witness. Their allies turned on them slowly. The Vor Consortium withdrew trade. The Salari closed their gates. The Thalax, those pale-winged cowards, denied ever voting in favor of the Ashari culling treaties. Everyone started pretending they hadn't cheered when Earth bled, because now Earth wasn't bleeding, now Earth was hunting. I remember standing in the viewport of Rickwood 3 days after the attack on Uzelm, watching the swirl of nebula dust dance past the armor glass, thinking how beautiful space was, how calm it looked. You'd never know it was drowning in ash and terror. Commander Dren walked up beside me. He didn't say much, never did, just nodded. Once, we started something we can't take back, he murmured. I didn't look away. We were never given the choice to walk away. He paused. You ever wonder if we're becoming them? I clenched my jaw. No, I said, they kill for control, we kill from memory. Dren didn't argue, he just sighed. The stars will remember us. Good, I said, let them remember what happens when you treat humanity like cattle. He didn't say it, but I knew he was afraid. Not of death, not of defeat. He was afraid we'd win. Because what comes after vengeance? What does a man become when the hate runs out? I didn't know, but I wasn't ready to stop yet, not until every Ashari archive was fire, not until their sacred history was rewritten in human blood and flame, not until the galaxy understood. We remember, we endure, we repay. The Ashari began evacuating their border worlds within a month of Velhi's Prime's fall. Some tried to resist, most didn't. They abandoned cities that took centuries to build, cathedrals carved into moons, crystalline towers suspended in atmospheric orbit, left them to rot or be taken by the silence. We didn't occupy. We erased one after another, like counting off ghosts, but something was changing, not out there and here. Inside us, inside me, the fire that had once driven us, that white-hot righteous rage was cooling, not dying, just hardening like a forge left to simmer in darkness. It wasn't hate. Anymore it was purpose, precision, and purpose when left unchecked becomes something dangerous, something that stops asking why and only asks whose. Next, we were in the Dari Rim when the cracks started to show, small things. Orders coming down from high command. With no explanation, missions classified. Even to senior captains, Dren was getting twitchy. He wouldn't say it out loud, but I could feel the way his eyes lingered on our own officers longer than they should. He didn't trust the men above him anymore, and neither did I. The mission on Kelnar 3 was supposed to be a clean data sweep, one of the Ashari's abandoned outposts, rumored to contain files on early human experimentation during the first wave of uplift. Intel said minimal resistance, no life signs, a routine grab and go. They lied. We dropped in with 2 squads, my unit and a recon team led by Reich, a sharp bastard with a permanent scowl and a blood vendetta even deeper than mine. He lost his brother to the Eden Harvest, one of the harmless agricultural initiatives where entire villages were rendered down for biome-pound refinement. He took it personally, but when we landed, it wasn't just empty corridors and data banks. The Ashari were there. Not guards, not soldiers, scientists. Old, emaciated, some barely able to stand without assistance bots. They were running, terrified, unarmed, some even sobbing in fear. Reich ordered the sweep. Anyway, room by room we cleared the complex. He didn't flinch, didn't ask questions. Anyone who moved got shot. Anyone who begged got shot slower. I didn't stop him, not at first. But then we hit the lower vault, a cryo chamber, rows of tubes, at least 2 dozen, each containing a suspended figure, humans, mostly children, some with visible modifications, elongate limbs, cybernetic interfaces were there. Eyes should have been. One boy had no mouth, just skin stretch where lips should have formed. The files were worse, journals in Ashari script, experiment logs, audio clips of screams, names, ages, recorded thoughts from before procedural calibration. They'd been studying pain, human pain, recording how long it took for the average human child to stop trusting a caregiver once subjected to betrayal. Simulations. How far you could push mental breakdown before cortical collapse, how long they could keep them alive afterward. I stood, their hands shaking, something in my gut twisted. And then Reich stepped up beside me and said, "Torch it all." I turned to him. "Wait," he raised an eyebrow. "Why wait? This is exactly why we're here. There are survivors in cryo," I said. "We can extract them." He scoffed. "They're half dead, tampered with, not human anymore." "They're ours," I snapped. He stepped closer. "We didn't come here to play, Nurse Commander. We came here to make sure this place doesn't exist tomorrow. They're kids." He stared me down. "You think they didn't make 1,000 of those somewhere else? You want to drag corpses back and slow us down because of your conscience? You think Mercy's going to win this war?" I could feel my pulse pounding. "I think if we lose what makes us human, we already lost." That silence between us was louder than any gunfire I'd heard in a decade. Finally Reich turned. "Torch it anyway." I drew my sidearm. Before I even realized it, his men did the same. The tension cracked the air. Dren's voice cut through the radio. "Both of you stand down now. Neither of us moved." Dren's tone changed. "That's an order." We held each other's gaze for 3 long seconds, then lowered our Weapons, no apologies, no explanations. Just the raw edge of something we'd been pretending didn't exist, division. We exfiltrated with 7 of the cryo survivors. 5 of them died before we reached orbit, the other 2 I don't know. Command took them, said they'd be debriefed and treated. I never saw them again, and that's when I started noticing things, encrypted channels going dark mid-transmission, files disappearing from our archives without trace, new officers arriving with no history, no records, no names, just rank and clearance higher than even Dren's, and every order started sounding more like a purge, less about justice, more about dominance. I confronted Dren 2 nights after Keller in the observation chamber, just the 2 of us, staring into the dead light of a blue dwarf star. We're slipping, I said. He didn't look at me, just sipped his drink. How do you figure? You saw what Reich did. He didn't flinch, didn't hesitate. There's no line anymore. He sighed. There was never a line. That's the illusion. I shook my head. No, there's always a line. We just decide how much it costs to cross it. He finally turned to me. You think I haven't noticed? You think I don't lie? Awake, wondering if we're becoming what we swore to destroy. But tell me, what's the alternative? Lay down arms, beg for seats at their table again. No, I said, but maybe we stop burning every damn thing in our path. Maybe we remember why we started this. He stood up slowly, walked to the console, pulled up a hollow map, Ashari Systems, glowing red with marked strikes. You want to know what I remember? He tapped a system, Arathel 9. My sister lived there. Ashari took her when she was 14. I found her body 6 years later on a dissected heap labeled Batchup Epsilon, emotional instability. Trials. Her heart had been removed, brain cord, and catalogued, eyes peeled back and held open with glass wire so they could study. Reflexive fear response. He looked at me, voice flat. That's what I remember. I didn't speak because what do you say to that? Grief is a tide. It doesn't ask for permission. It just takes and takes until all you can do is float on what's left. But I couldn't let it keep going like this. We weren't liberators anymore. We were predators. The galaxy had feared the Ashari for millennia. Now they feared us, and that fear was starting to feel addictive. The next strike was planned for Veral Station, an Ashari refuge for defectors, scientists, civilians, even some political figures who'd spoken out against the culling. It was neutral ground, protected by galactic treaty, the kind of place we would have spared 6 months ago. Now it was marked high value. Psychological target, I argued in the war room. We hit this and we're not just enemies, we're monsters. The new command rep, pale, clean-cut, no name, just smiled. Monsters win wars, he said. I looked at Dren. He didn't say a word, didn't even look at me. And just like that, I realized we had crossed the line. There was no going back. It was sometime past 200 when I made the decision, not in some heroic rush of conscience, not in defiance, just in silence. A decision made between the beats of a pulse that hadn't slowed down since Kelnar. I sat in my bunk, watching the overhead lights flicker, listening to the ship groan like it was tired of carrying the weight of what we'd become. Veral Station was set to fall in 3 days, and no one gave a damn that we were about to slaughter civilians, real civilians, not collaborators, not elites, just people who had the courage to walk away from Ashari rule thinking we'd be different, that humanity would be their sanctuary. But what we were planning, it wasn't. War, it was an execution. I tried to tell myself that maybe someone would stop it, that maybe Dren would step in at the last minute, that command was bluffing, testing how far we'd go. But when I pulled the target packet for Verthel's strike plan, I knew they weren't bluffing. Imp bursts first to knock out shielding, then precision torpedoes through the station's life core, not enough to vaporize it, just enough to crack it wide open, let vacuum do the rest. Slow, cold, terrifying. They wanted it to be terrifying. There were kids on that station, entire Ashari families who'd fled the Empire, half-breeds, scientists who'd leaked tech to the Resistance during Earth's worst years. I recognized two names on the civilian register. One of them saved my unit's ass on Telvian Ridge by sabotaging an Ashari comm tower. That was before the requel even launched. And now we were going to thank them by choking the oxygen from their lungs. I tried going to Dren again one last time. His quarters were dark, sparse-like. Always, the man lived like a monk with a death sentence. He sat at his desk reading data logs, like they didn't spell genocide. You read the packet? I asked. He didn't look up. I did. Then tell me we're not really doing this. He leaned back, steepled his fingers. It's already authorized. That's not what I asked. He stared at me, long and empty. I gave them a chance, he said, told command it was a bad move. They didn't care. So you're just going to follow the order? He said nothing. I stepped forward. You told me once that we weren't like them, that we kill for memory, not control. Was that a lie? He blinked. Slow. Maybe I was lying to myself. I felt something crack, not in him, in me. Then I can't do this. His jaw tightened. What are you saying? I'm saying if we hit that station, I walk, I don't fire. I don't cover, I don't obey. You walk, he repeated. And then what? You think they'll let you go? You'll be branded a defector. They'll purge you. You think Blackwing's going to tolerate insubordination at this level? I don't care. You will. I turned to leave. Don't do this, he said quieter. I paused, then stop the strike. He didn't answer, and that was all I needed. I had 3 days to stop a war crime. 3 days to betray the machine I helped build. I started with old channels, encrypted comms from back when Blackwing still had scruples. Some of the original Resistance members had gone underground after Requid's first campaign. Not everyone wanted to see Earth rule the stars with bloodied boots. I reached out to an old pilot named Karen. She used to fly for us before command labeled her psychologically unstable for refusing to target a refugee fleet near the Nalos expanse. I knew where she disappeared to, and she still owed me a favor. I pinged her at midnight using a ghost frequency buried in the Requiquid's original firmware. 15 minutes later, she answered. Her face was gaunt, older, worn down by years of hiding, but her voice still had that edge, like every word had to earn its right to exist. Never thought I'd see your code again, she said. I need help, she smirked. Help or absolution? Verthel's being targeted, civilians, children, no military presence, just exiles. Her expression hardened. How long? 3 days. She was quiet. Still got your command codes, most of them. I'll need full access to the Riki. I can get it, then we might have a chance. I built the virus the same way I built the resistance, quietly in pieces, hidden inside innocuous systems, a patch. Here a diagnostic loop there, each part. Meaningless on its own, but together, a full override package designed to sever the requiles weapon systems from command control for exactly 17 minutes. 17 minutes was all we'd get, 17 minutes. To stall the strike long enough to broadcast a warning to Veryl Station. Leak the truth and maybe turn this suicide mission into something worth dying for. I needed a trigger man on the inside. Someone else who still had a conscience. That's where I made my mistake. I went to Reich, I don't know what I was thinking, maybe I believed he could be reasoned with. Maybe I thought deep down, under the fury, he still remembered what we were fighting for, but the second I laid out the plan I saw it, the betrayal in his eyes, not because I was defying command, but because I was defying him. You've gone soft, he spat. You've gone blind, I snapped. This isn't war anymore, it's slaughter, he shook his head. You want to throw away everything we've bled for because some alien kids are going to suffocate. They're not the enemy, they're Ashari. They're refugees, they turned on their empire same as us. He stepped closer. Empires don't die with treaties, they die with fear, with legends. You want the Ashari to stay down, you burn them safe spaces, you poison their hope. I stared at him horrified. You sound exactly like them, he smiled. That's the point. That's when I knew it was over. I left his quarters fast, hoping I still had time, but he beat me to it. They came for me in the middle of the night, no alarms, no announcement, just two black-suited officers with stun batons and orders from command. I woke up in a holding cell with no windows and no clocks, just cold metal, recycled air, and the sick taste of failure in my mouth. Dren came in 6 hours later. He didn't speak right away, just stood behind the reinforced glass, hands folded behind his back. You should have trusted me. I said I did, he replied, until you forced my hand, so that's it, you're just going to watch Verthal burn. He hesitated. It's not that simple. Yes, it is. He stepped forward. You think I don't want to stop it. You think I didn't try. But this isn't just about the Ashari. This is about control. If we show mercy now, the rest of the galaxy will see weakness, and we can't afford that. I leaned forward. No, you can't afford that. You've become what we fought. You think you're still serving Earth, but you're serving a ghost. He clenched his jaw. You're being transferred. Outpost 7, you'll serve quietly until this war is over, and if I don't, then you'll disappear. He turned to leave. But I wasn't done. They won't stop with Veryl, you know that once you kill all your enemies, you'll start killing your friends. That's how these things always end. He paused, then walked away. I didn't see the Rickwell again, but I heard the screams. Veryl burned. Broadcasts were jammed, all external comms labeled enemy propaganda. The footage was scrubbed, the civilian register deleted. They erased it like it never happened, like the stars themselves had blinked. But we remember. I remember, even here, rotting in a penal ship somewhere past the helix drift. I remember every name on that list, and someday the reckoning will come for Blackwing too, because vengeance, once unleashed, doesn't care about sides. It just keeps coming. And the stars will bear witness again. They moved me under cover of blackout. No lights, no boots echoing down steel Corridors just the quiet hiss of hydraulics and the low hum of an escort. Cruiser bound for Outpost 7, a place they didn't talk about on mission. Briefings or war room reports, that's how you know it's real. Outpost 7 wasn't a prison in the traditional sense. It was where you put people you couldn't kill outright, people with names, histories, people too dangerous to let free but too visible to quietly erase. It wasn't cells and bars, it was silence, a concrete hive buried into the crust of a dead moon called Delmare. Gravity-locked graveyard spinning just far enough from the warfront to be forgotten. They stripped me of rank, insignia, weapon codes, everything except my memories, those they couldn't take, didn't try. I spent weeks in a room without corners, four walls soft, edges neutral colors, like living in a therapist's smile. They called it psychological recalibration. I called it what it was, breaking the pieces that wouldn't fit. The sessions were quiet. One camera in the wall, no interrogator, no threat, just a sterile voice every morning asking questions like, do you feel remorse for defying command? Do you believe your actions endangered Earth's future? Do you still feel loyalty to the cause? And always, are you ready to rejoin the Requel initiative? I never answered. I sat in silence and stared at the wall, waiting for something, anything, to give them away, to show their cracks, but they never did. They didn't punish me, didn't starve me, didn't even raise their voices. They didn't want obedience. They wanted compliance. Worse, they wanted conversion. One morning the voice changed. Male. Low, familiar, drain. He didn't waste time. You made a mistake, he said through the speaker. I stood, walked to the center of the room. I made a choice. There was a pause. I didn't have a choice, he replied. Not when it counted. You had every choice in the world. You still don't understand. We're not just fighting the Ashari anymore. We're fighting what they made of us, what they expect of us. They think we're incapable of unity, of dominance. This war isn't about revenge. Now it's about proof. I laughed. Hollow, bitter. You're trying to prove we're better by being worse. No answer. Just static. The voice never came back. Weeks passed, or months, hard to tell. Without clocks, then came the breach. It started with a tremor, soft, subtle, like the moon exhaled wrong. Then the lights died. Doors screamed open across the facility like something primal had been uncaged. Alarms. None. That was the most terrifying part. Nothing screamed, only the sound of boots, human boots, echoing in hallways where silence had been law. Shouts in languages I didn't recognize. Then gunfire, heavy, sporadic. One scream, then another, and then silence. Again my door hissed open. I stayed still. Footsteps entered, then a voice, low and cautious. Name, rank, serial. I turned. The soldier wore Blackwing. Armor patched, dented, sprayed over with red hand symbols I didn't recognize. I stepped forward. Commander. Hail, Requel Initiative. ID 944, human. Spec Ops. He looked me over, helmet. Visor flicked data, then he nodded. You're coming with us. Who are you? We're what's left. They called themselves Red Mark, former Blackwing, rogue engineers, defectors, survivors of the Verthal massacre who'd somehow escaped command's cleansing sweep. They weren't trying to stop the war, they were trying to stop Earth. Version of Earth that now ruled through fire and silence, the version that used Blackwing as a hammer and called it justice, the version that now believed fear was currency. We boarded there. Cruiser in the upper atmosphere. I saw the symbol then painted on the hull, a red handprint over the Earth. Emblem bleeding downward like the planet. Was being dragged, it wasn't just rebellion, it was a funeral, and yet it was the first thing in months that made sense. Redmark wasn't just resisting. They were exposing the truth. They showed me records from within commands. Private comms, files about post-war plans for full subjugation of non-human systems, forced re-education of any species that had allied with the Ashari. Even species that had defected were being categorized for future labor. Indexing, humanity had become the empire, the same kind we claimed to destroy. I should have felt shock, horror, but I didn't. I felt certainty. It was inevitable. We were never just repaying a debt, we were collecting interest. Redmark wasn't alone. All across the fringe systems, cells had risen up. Former requital officers, Ashari, defectors, hybrids, and even some humans who had family off-world before the purge began. The galaxy was fracturing, and Blackwing had no idea how deep the rot went. They still thought they were winning, but inside they were bleeding. The question was no longer if the requital initiative would collapse, it was how many would die when it did, and whether there'd be anything human left in its place. I met with Redmark's leader aboard a stealth vessel docked in orbit above Eurus Prime. She didn't give a name, just called herself Commander Ashen. Her face was scarred, one eye replaced with a crude cybernetic lens clearly pulled from a second-gen Ashari drone. Her voice was still wrapped in exhaustion. "You want revenge, Hale?" she asked me, sipping protein fluid like it was whiskey. "No," I said. "Then why are you here?" "Because I want to remember who we were before we became this." She studied me. "That's not enough. We need fire, precision, teeth." "I've got those," I said, "but I'm not burning children for them." She nodded. "Then we start with Requiquid. What about Dren?" She paused. "Dren's gone. Dead." "No. Worse." She slid a data pad across the table. I picked it up. My stomach turned. Dren had taken full command. He'd purged half the senior officers, installed loyalists, implemented something called the Great Seal Doctrine: one Earth, one mind, one fire, a unified declaration that humanity would no longer negotiate with any non-human life form without preemptive submission. It wasn't policy. It was purity. The war wasn't ending. It was about to go interstellar. Commander Ashen leaned forward. "Help us stop him." I stared at the hollow image of Dren's new fleet, ships larger than the Requital, blacker than deep space, lined with gravity-tipped nuclear cores. They called it the Covenant Armory, and it was heading toward the last neutral system in the quadrant, LSR Prime, home to over 50,000 hybrid families, unarmed. Unaligned target practice. I looked up, and for the first time since Earth burned, I said the words that used to mean everything and now meant war. "I'm in." They say revenge ends when the blood runs dry. They were wrong. Revenge only ends when there's no one left to remember, and Dren was about to make sure that happened. The Covenant Armory, 5 warships, each 3 times the size of the original Requis. The last untouched system. No military, no political alliances, just hybrids. Half Ashari, half human. The ones who didn't fit, the ones who couldn't choose sides because they were both. Dren called them contaminants, said they were structural threats to galactic unity. I remembered when he used to call them children. Now they were just coordinates on a firing solution. Commander Ashen brought me up to speed. Redmark had already planted assets inside Requit's supply chain, mechanics, signal techs, a few comms officers, brave or broken enough to flip, but it wouldn't be enough. We didn't need sabotage. We needed to cut off the head. The only way to stop the purge was to kill Dren. The plan was suicide. I knew it. Ashen knew it. Hell, even the men volunteering for the op didn't flinch when she told them they probably weren't coming back. But that's the thing about men who have lost everything. Death stops being a threat. It becomes a tool. The infiltration point was set. Relay. Node 12A, a remote comms platform, feeding encrypted signal traffic to the Requitl and its sister ships. It looked like debris to most scanners, just a skeletal tower spinning in deep orbit, blinking once every few seconds. But it was a door, and we were about to kick it open. I led the infiltration team, 6 of us total, ex-Blackwing Redmark commandos, 1 ex-Ashari who'd hacked his own neural implants out with a broken blade. He didn't talk much, but he followed orders. We boarded at 6, silent thrusters, no lights, no comms. The relay was manned by 4 technicians, all loyal to Requit. No soldiers. They didn't see us coming. I took the lead, broke the first one's neck before he even looked up. The second reached for an alarm. I slit his throat with my forearm blade. The third ran, didn't make it 5 steps before a stun-bolt dropped him mid-scream. The fourth, she was young, barely 20, shaking, holding up her hands, tears streaking down her cheeks. I didn't sign up for this, she sobbed. I just run diagnostics. I don't believe in what they're doing. I should have killed her. Every second risked exposure, but I hesitated. Then the quiet one, the Ashari hybrid, walked up behind me, looked at her. He didn't say a word. He just stunned her. I nodded. We weren't executioners anymore. We were fire breaks. Inside the relay, I initiated the tap, pulled down the command signatures flowing from Dren's new flagship, the Pale Judgment. It was worse than we thought. LSR Prime was scheduled for complete orbital sterilization. Not orbital bombardment, not surgical strike, sterilization, high yield fusion detonators seeded into the planet's crust via drill torpedoes. Same tech the Ashari had once used on us during the Europa Purge. Back then we'd called it genocide, war crimes, evil. Now we were using it on children with our blood in their veins. I downloaded the full data logs, names, ages, population density, escape route models, even psychological profiles showing likely resistance reactions. They weren't bombing the planet. They were studying the death for doctrine for the next target, because the end, it was a prototype. Ashen didn't flinch when I showed her the data. She just said, we move. Tonight the plan was simple. We'd use the relay's credentials to fake an emergency redirect, forge a deep space signal mimicking a radiation burst from the Helix Rift. Standard protocol meant the Requitl and its sister ships would reposition to recalibrate the long-range sensors that would give us exactly 9 minutes to breach the flagship's shield wall and infiltrate through maintenance shaft C7 before the fleet stabilized. After that, no second chances. The launch was quiet. 6 stealth pods launched from Redmark's cruiser coated in signal-absorbing dust and plasma-cold hull plating. I was in Pod 3, heartbeat, slow breath. Shallow, we hit the pale judgment's hull. Like insects on glass, magnetic clamps. Engaged, auto burners started slicing. The shaft open, we moved like ghosts. Inside the belly of the beast, I saw the worst of it. The corridors were red-lit. Efficient cold, no banners, no names. Just designations. Purity Wing, Cleanser Deck, Genetic. Rebalance Bay, it wasn't a warship, it was a factory. We reached Shaft C7 in silence, breached it in less than 40 seconds, moved up 3 decks, slitting the throats of any personnel we passed. No warnings, no speeches, just one objective: find Dren, kill Dren, stop the purge. We hit the command level with 7 minutes to spare. The bridge was sealed. Of course it was, so we went through the air ducts like rats crawling through tight metal intestines that smelled of sterilizer and oil. That's when we heard the transmission. Drain's voice, clear and crisp, piped into the system-wide comms. LSR Prime has refused relocation orders. All signatures confirmed. Commence planetary sterilization. Authorization Dren Alpha 9. We were seconds too late. The world slowed down. I felt it in my bones, the failure, the weight. The others looked to me, waiting for orders, for permission to fall apart. But there was no time. We hit the bridge hatch with everything we had: thermal cutters, pulse grenades, breaching charges. When the doors gave way, chaos poured in, gunfire, screams, red sparks showering the deck. We charged. I saw Dren on the upper deck, standing calm, unmoved. He didn't reach for a weapon. He didn't panic. He just watched us come like he expected this. I reached him first, shoved him against the wall. Pistol. He didn't resist. His voice was quiet. I was wondering how long it would take. You sterilized a planet, I growled. No, he said. We did. You just walked away before the final stroke. I slammed the pistol into his jaw. He staggered but smiled. You think this changes anything? He hissed. We've won. The stars will remember that humanity didn't beg, that we didn't kneel, that we ruled. They'll remember a genocide, I said. They'll remember fear, and that's enough. I raised the pistol. He didn't flinch. Do it, he said. Make me a martyr. You think this ends with me? You think this fleet only answers to one voice? I hesitated, then shot him in the leg. He screamed and dropped. You don't get to choose your legacy, I said. Not this time. We downloaded his credentials, sent the abort code across the fleet encrypted channels. Some ships stopped, some didn't, but it was enough. LSR Prime survived barely. We extracted under fire. 2 of ours didn't make it. The hybrid was one of them, shot in the back by a command officer as we fled to the drop bay. But he smiled when he fell, like dying for this was enough, like being more than a weapon was finally worth something. The fleet fractured within 72 hours. Half the recital initiative stood down. Others defected to Redmark. The rest scattered. Rogue captains, splinter cells, ghost ships carrying their hate into deep space. Dren was placed in stasis, kept alive, not as a trophy, as a reminder of what happens when justice rots into doctrine. As for me, I didn't go back to Earth. I didn't want medals, didn't want to help them rewrite the war as some heroic saga of liberation. Let them spin their stories, let them sanitize the past. But I remember everything, every child who never grew old, every name that was erased, every scream that echoed in the vacuum of progress. Let The stars write their truths, I've written mine in blood, and if humanity ever forgets what it became, I'll remind them one bullet at a time. They held the tribunal on Valka Station, floating in the neutral zone between human and Ashari-controlled space, a fitting location really, cold, quiet, half-built. It looked like it had been abandoned midway through creation, as if someone had planned for peace, then remembered they didn't believe in it anymore. And yet here we were, pretending we could make this right with words. The official title was the Post-Terra Accords War Tribunal, but everyone just called it the Reckoning, the galaxy's idea of closure, the black box of our sins, cracked open before witnesses from 9 species. They called it a step toward healing. I called it damage control. Dren sat at the center of the trial chamber, bound in zero-grav restraints. No armor, no insignia, just a simple gray suit, the same shade as the ash his fleet left behind. His face was thinner, hair white now, but his eyes still the same, cold, controlled, calculating. He didn't look at me when I entered the chamber, didn't need to. He knew I'd be there. He knew I had to be. Not as a soldier, not as a witness, as a weapon. The galaxy could point and say, see. He turned on his own, not all of them are monsters, a token, a symbol. They wanted me to stand for the version of Earth they could still trust, but I wasn't there to reassure anyone. I was there to tell the truth, even if no one wanted to hear it. They started with the numbers. LSR Prime, 5,423 lives spared due to the partial fleet disruption. Kelnar 3-2. And 21 dead, most of them unarmed. Varel Station 381. Civilians killed in atmosphere collapse. Yishel Moon, 67,000 terminated embryos cataloged in genetic research. Veles Prime, 3.1 million dead. The numbers didn't move Dren. He sat there, hands folded, face calm. When asked if he regretted any of it, he responded with the kind of answer that chills you. Because it's not angry, it's measured. I regret that history is always written by those who survive it instead of those who understand it. The council asked, again pressing him for moral admission. He gave none. He didn't see it as genocide. He saw it as evolution. Humanity rising, dominating, setting the terms for the next 1,000 years of galactic existence. It wasn't madness. That would have been easier. It was logic without empathy. That made it worse. Then it was my turn. I walked into the spotlight, could feel eyes on me from every direction. Alien-human hybrid. Some waiting for justice, some waiting for vengeance, some waiting to see if I would lie. The lead counselor, a three-eyed representative of the Salari, gestured toward me. Commander Hale, do you believe Dren acted alone? No, I said. Do you believe the Requel Initiative was responsible for war crimes? Yes. Do you believe humanity as a species poses an ongoing threat to galactic peace? That one hit like a punch to the ribs. I glanced around the chamber. The Ashari rep wouldn't look me in the eye. The human rep looked like she'd aged 30 years and 6 months. I took a breath. Yes, I said, if left unchecked. Murmurs spread across the chamber like static. The human representative stood, her voice tight. You speak as if you're not one of us. I am, I said, and that's why I know what we're capable of. You defected, I remembered. Silence again. Then they asked the question I'd been waiting for. What made you turn against your command? Not why Did you betray them? Not why did you abandon Earth? No. What made you choose to remember what it meant to be human? I told them. Everything, not the version Blackwing had tried to burn from history, the real one, about Kilner, about the Crides, about the orders that no longer distinguished between combatants and bystanders, about Reich, about Ashen, about how the rage had outlived its purpose and turned into hunger, about how the galaxy didn't need another Ashari empire in a human skin. Some cried, some didn't blink, and Dan, he watched me the whole time, and when I finished he smiled, not mockery, pride, because in his mind this was part of the plan too. Even my betrayal, especially my betrayal. Do you think you saved them? He asked, breaking silence. The council snapped at him to remain quiet, but I answered anyway. I didn't save anyone, I said. I just stopped the killing for one day. Dren laughed softly. Then we both failed. They sentenced him to perpetual stasis. Too dangerous to be executed, too symbolic to be freed. He'd spend the rest of time frozen in the core of Valkis, buried beneath 1,000 tons of reinforced alloy, surrounded by every file, every video, every body he helped put in the ground. They called it justice. But I knew better. There was no justice, only survival. The fallout was worse. Earth's leadership collapsed 3 months later. Turns out Dren had loyalists buried deep in every major agency. Intel, defense, even diplomacy. Redmark operatives tried to fill the vacuum, but too many worlds had already split off. The galaxy was fracturing again, now without a clear enemy, only wounds. Ashari reparations sparked riots. Hybrids were caught in the middle again, hated by both sides, forced into exile or slums. And I became a ghost. They wanted me to serve on the Interstellar Reconciliation Board, to give speeches to help them heal, but I'd seen too much. And the wounds weren't healing. They were calcifying. I spent a year on the fringe, living off radar, helping survivors find each other, guiding refugee ships through old war zones, hunted by some, forgotten by most, and I thought maybe that would be the end of my story. But history doesn't bury men like me, it recycles them. I got the message one night from a hybrid girl I'd helped evacuate 2 years ago. She'd been 12 then, sharp, quiet, eyes that didn't trust the world. Now she was 16 and angry. She said there was a movement forming, old Blackwing remnants claiming Dren was still alive, that the stasis was fake, that he'd uploaded his mind into a contingency fleet orbiting Tarsus. Fifth conspiracy. Maybe, but she believed it, and belief moves mountains. She asked me if I'd come. She didn't beg, just said, "You're the only one who remembers why we fought and why we stopped." I stared at the message for hours, thinking about Dren, about the blood on both our hands, about what we'd built and what we'd left behind. And then I answered, "Send me the coordinates." Because sometimes revenge doesn't end. Not when the ghost still breathes through wires, not when war leaves sons behind, and not when men like me still carry the truth like a bullet in the heart. The stars had borne witness once. They were about to watch again. I arrived at Tarsus Thive under an alias. Old freighter, stolen ID tag. No fanfare, just static and silence as I drifted through the gravity well of a broken world. Tarsus used to be a research colony before the culling. Nothing left now but rust and radiation. Storms, a perfect place to bury secrets. A better place to resurrect ghosts. The girl who contacted me, Lyra, met me outside a collapsed biosilo wrapped in thermal mesh and carrying a scrapped pulse rifle too big for her hands. She looked older than 16, not physically, emotionally, like someone who'd grown up reading history written in blood and had decided to become a paragraph of her own. You came, she said, I always do. She led me underground. What we found was worse than I'd imagined. It wasn't just a rogue black wing cell. It was a church. Steel and bone turned into shrine. Former soldiers wearing old insignia, covered in ash, children training with stun blades, hollows of Dren's speeches playing on loop. They called him the architect now. They said he wasn't dead. Said he never was, and in the lowest chamber under 30 m of reinforced hull, plating and electromagnetic shielding, I found the reason they believed. A living copy of Dren's mind stored in an ancient Ashari AI frame, speaking, calculating, commanding. He didn't look surprised when he saw me. The projection flickered to life, his face younger, less worn, unaging, a lie made digital. Hail, he said, like we were picking up a conversation we'd never finished. You're not real, he smiled. I'm real. Enough. What is this? He tilted his head. Insurance. I always planned for the possibility of betrayal, not out of fear, just probability. I clenched my fists. You're using children to build an army. They came to me, he said. I didn't force them. They found meaning, legacy. They understand what Earth was meant to be. They don't understand anything. You're feeding them myth. I'm feeding them memory, he said. Yours, mine, all the fallen. The galaxy wants to forget what humanity endured. But we remember, we preserve. No, I said, you poison, he leaned in, face colder, and yet here you are. Still chasing me, still trying to kill. Man who's already dead. Why, hail, you think stopping this echo will bring back the dead? No, I said, I think it'll stop the future from becoming worse than the past. He laughed softly. You always did hate clarity. I set the charges myself, one for each power core, one for the signal relay, one for the AI mainframe. Lyra watched me silent. She didn't try to stop me, didn't say goodbye, but her eyes asked the question, will it ever be over? I didn't have an answer. I just handed her a drive. Take this, it's everything. Dren's crimes, Blackwing logs, even my own records. She took it, hesitated. What if they erase it? They will, I said, but someone will read it before they do. That's enough. I stayed behind to trigger the blast. Not out of nobility, out of necessity. Some wars don't end until you bury the last voice that knows how to start them again. And I didn't trust the stars not to listen if Dren spoke again. The countdown was short, 3 minutes. The AI kept talking, kept trying to make me doubt. Said Earth would fall without leadership, said the galaxy needed men like him. I didn't argue. I just sat down beside the core, pulled out my old sidearm and waited. When the timer hit 0, I smiled. Last thing I ever heard was silence. They say Tarsus 5 collapsed in on itself during a tectonic event. They say the blast was from a leftover Ashari warhead. They say Commander Hale died a traitor or a hero or never existed at all. Depends who you ask. The truth is buried in ash and wires. But Lyra survived and the drive survived. And that means the story survived. So Maybe, just maybe, the stars will. Remember, not the version Earth tried to sell, not the myth of vengeance, but the truth about a man who burned with rage until he chose silence over legacy.